Good evening, Rabbi. Today we're going to talk about a topic which actually I should have covered quite a while ago, probably. Somehow it seems to have slipped my mind to cover this topic, even though I have talked about it in the classes inside the shul sometimes, when we don't film anything. We don't video sometimes. Sometimes it's on Shabbat, sometimes whatever. So the truth is that I always wanted to talk about this because it's a very important topic for the Jewish people to understand this. And it has to do a lot with many different areas of Jewish law. It affects a lot of things. And there's also a lot of misunderstandings regarding this, especially the place where we live over here. There's a lot of things which are not so clear to people. So in order to clarify whatever we can do, according to our limited ability, we'll try to do the best we can, right? So what are we talking about? We're talking about the famous machloket, which is between Rabbenu Tam and the Geonim. What does that mean? We're talking about the issue of when does night come? When does it become night? Why do we need to know about that, when night comes? Because many halachot have to do with this halacha, with this issue. When does night come? Because, for instance, right, you want to know when the holiday is over. You want to know when Shabbat is over. You want to know when to light certain candles because now it's already night. Anything like that, right? Anything which has to do with the issue of being night. Or when to pray Arvit, when to pray the evening prayers. When is the last time you can pray the afternoon prayers? Once it becomes night, you can't pray the afternoon prayers anymore. It's already night. So it has to do with a lot of areas in law that we need to discuss, and talk about. And therefore it has to be clarified, and we have to understand how that works. So the way it works, first of all, is like this, right? That there's two different gemarot that talk about this issue. One is in Shabbat Lamed Daled Amud Bet. Over there it says that how long does it take for it become night? So what happens is the sun goes down, it says over there. Once the sun goes down, the time that it takes to walk 3/4 of a mil, right? In those days, there was a measure called mil, which is like a mile, like it sounds the same, right? But the truth is that the mil is more like a kilometer, very close to the kilometer, not really the mile, but it has the same name. Whatever, yeah? So 3/4 of a mil. So says the Gemara, how long does it take to walk that much, right? There's actually machloket in the Rishonim. The Rishonim, the earlier authorities, have a dispute about that. But according to the accepted opinion, a mil, which is about a kilometer, it takes 18 minutes to walk. 1 kilometer, right? For the average person, whatever, we're not talking about speed walking, right? We're not talking about marathoning, obviously, right? We're talking about normal procession, right? So that's one opinion. Then there's another Gemara in Pesachim, Tzadik Gimel Amud Bet. Over there, says the Gemara something else altogether, right? The contradiction between these two Gemarot. Over there it says, from the time the sun goes down until it becomes night, it's the time that it takes to walk 4 mil, right? Which is 1 parsa, right? According to this, parsa is a larger measure. That's 72 minutes. Right? So you have a big discrepancy over here, right? This Gemara, Shabbat, says Lamed Daled Amud Bet, says over there 13 and a half minutes. That's what it is. 3/4 of 1 mil. Because 1 mil is 18 minutes. It takes to walk. 3/4 is 13 and a half. So then you have Shabbat in Pesachim over there at Tzadikim Amud Bet. It says it's 72 minutes. So quite a big discrepancy. So comes now two groups of poskim, right? Rabbis of the medieval era, earlier authorities. We call them the Geonim, right? The Geonim who were right after the period of the Talmud. They were the rabbis after the Talmud, the Geonim. So there was also somebody in the middle there called Savoraim, but we're not going to get into that. No, that's not the issue. But anyway, the Geonim were very early authorities and very authoritative because they were very close to the tradition from the yeshivot in the Babylonian, the Babel, in Iraq, which were the main yeshivot at that time. Those were the main center of Torah at that time, in Babel. So what happened was that the Geonim, they hold like this Gemara in Gemara Shabbat, Lamed Daled Amud Bet, that it takes 13 and a half minutes to become night. What does that mean? Sun goes down, another 13 and a half minutes, boom, it's already night. What does that mean? That means that 3 stars have already come out, right? And it's already dark. It's considered to be night. When we talk about stars, by the way, we have to mention, right? We're not talking about when it comes to stars, right? In the Torah literature, it talks about 3 types of stars. One is large ones. Like the famous example, right, is the North Star, not the engine. We're not talking about that. That was a failure, right? But anyway, so we're talking about the North Star, right, which is very visible. It's like the largest star, perhaps, that we have, right? That we can see. That's called a large star. There's also the smaller stars, which are like very tiny, and you can only see them like when it's pitch dark. Otherwise, you can't see them. There's no chance to see them. When it comes to the big star like that, the North Star, whatever, and things like that, says the Gemara, you can even see them in the daytime if you have a good eye. If your eye is trained, you can see them in the daytime, those stars. By the way, right, that I'm sure you've seen several times, that you can see sometimes the moon in the daytime as well. Have you ever seen the moon in the daytime? Just a couple of days ago I saw it. So the moon is visible in the daytime. So not always, but sometimes, depending on the position. Right? So I remember, by the way, one time, I was just walking with somebody in the street, a guest, I had some kind of a guest, and we looked up in the sky, and it was dark, and he showed me, he says, you see that over there? That's Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was true, I couldn't believe it. I was like,
it's red.
You could see, right, you could see Mars, with your naked eye. You don't need a telescope for that. Can you imagine? So there's a lot more things you can see that you may have imagined. But the point is like this, right, that the Chazal tell us, the rabbis, that when it comes to the big stars, they're visible in the daytime. So therefore, if you see them, it doesn't mean that it's night, because it's, you can see them in the daytime as well. There's also the smaller stars, which are tiny. Why do we say tiny? To us it's tiny. Over there it's actually very big, right? Wherever it's standing, right? That's something else. We're not talking about that. But for us, that we see it, we see it as tiny, because it's far away. So those you can only see when it's pitch dark. So then, right, it says, say the poskim, that it has to be 3 medium-sized stars. Right? What does that mean? You can't see them in the daytime because they're too small. They're not like the large ones. And they're not like the small ones which you can only see pitch dark. So you can see it like when it's like twilight, like kind of like getting darker, Little by little getting darker, you can start to see them already. So when you have 3 medium-sized stars, says the Gemara, says the poskim, that when you have 3 medium-sized stars, and they have to be also like one next to the other, right? Not like scattered, right? Like 3 next to each other, juxtaposed next to each other. So once you have that, it's already night. So according to the Geonim, when is that? When does that come? 13 and a half minutes after the sun goes down. You can already see the stars. Those medium-sized stars. 3 in a row, whatever, right? So this is basically the rundown between the Geonim and Rabbenu Tam. So the question is, which one is the Halacha? What do we do, right? How do we use these things? How does it come out, practically speaking, right? When it comes to things that we do in Judaism, which, the time factor is a very big thing in Judaism. Everything is done always with respect to time, like time for this mitzvah, time for that mitzvah, right? Every mitzvah has its own time. So, how does it work out? The truth is, right, if you look in the sky, and, you 13 and a half minutes after the sun went down, according to the Geonim, that's already night. So what do you see if you look in the sky? You see that it's still not night, you can still see the daytime a little bit. So it's not really, according to the naked eye, it's certainly not night. So it doesn't seem to work out very well, according to what you see in the sky. Also, Rabbenu Tam, who says 72 minutes after the sun went down, then it becomes night. It also doesn't feel so well. Why? Because it's already pitch dark. Even it would be before that, 20 minutes before that, 10 minutes before that, Rabbenu Tam. It's already pitch dark as it is, So then why do you need 72 minutes? For what? There's a lot of questions, regarding this. How does that work? So the truth is that you can compare it to Amud HaShachar, which is the dawn. Mm-hmm. So according to the accepted opinion in Halacha, the dawn, which is like a little bit of light that comes in the morning, before the sun rises. So the Chazal it says in the Gemara and the Poskim, they write that the dawn occurs 72 minutes before sunrise. But if you look in the sky, right, like you wake up early, sometimes you wake up early and you see the dawn at that time, 72 minutes before sunrise, it's like pitch dark. So how can it be dawn? I don't see nothing. Right? So that's also not so clear how that works. So the truth is, that all these questions that I'm asking right now, they all do have an answer. There is an answer for everything. So what does that mean? That when it comes to the issue of dawn, what happens is like this, right? That at the beginning of dawn, it's a very small ray of light that comes in, and it starts to come up on the horizon. The naked eye cannot sense that, cannot see that, So that's why we don't see it. For us, it looks like it's pitch dark, But the halacha says it's already dawn. So what happens is that as time goes on, before sunrise, gradually it starts getting lighter and lighter and lighter, right? Little by little. And then when the sun comes up, right? You know what that is, right? Nobody has to tell you that. Sunrise. You know what that is. So this is the way it works. So what does that mean? Just like when it comes to dawn, the light comes in very gradually. But the truth is, according to Halacha, according to Talmud, once the dawn begins already, even though you can't see it with your naked eye, it's already considered to be daytime. Even though it's quite dark still. Almost like pitch dark, whatever. It could be pitch dark. But nevertheless, it's day. Why? Because we know that there's already some light there. We just can't see with the naked eye. Our eyes are not strong enough to see. They're not trained enough to see that, right? Whatever. They're not discerning enough to see. So, same thing when it comes to the night also. In other words, when does it become night? According to Rabbenu Tam, it's 72 minutes after the sun goes down. So same thing. What does that mean? That gradually gets darker and darker and darker. And then it gets so dark at a certain point where, you can't even see the light anymore. To the naked eye, can't recognize that there's any light left. But according to Halacha, according to Rabbenu Tam, right, according to this opinion, which is, as we said, right, brought down the Gemara Pesachim, over there, so what happens is that the Be'emet, according to this, and probably that's the way it is, in reality, that there is some light there, but the naked eye cannot see it. Again, right, same thing. So what does that mean? That according to this opinion, right, Rabbenu Tam, that we're talking about 72 minutes, it must be, right, that it's only night when it's like purely night. There's no day mixed in there whatsoever. There's not even a smidgen of light there, even though it's something that the naked eye cannot see. So this is according to Rabbenu Tam. But according to Geonim, what happens is like this, right, that, as we said, 13 and a half minutes after the sun goes down, it's already considered to be night. You look in the sky, but it's still like daytime somewhat. In other words, it's still like, it's not dusk yet, it's just like twilight. You can still see some light. So if that's the case, right, how can we say that it's night? So according to the Geonim, see, the whole thing is like this, right, that the halachic definition of night is not what we know as night. It's not really the same thing, So a person has to, first of all, remove that from his mind. Don't try to think, I thought night was only when it's dark, whatever. You thought, but the halacha is not like that. The halacha says it's night whenever the halacha says it's night. So you can't always compare your preconceptions to what's written in the Torah. Those are two different things altogether. Right? The way you've been raised, the culture you've been raised in, they have all kinds of assumptions but those assumptions don't always work out in halacha. So that's exactly right. That why it doesn't match. But there's also another thing, which is that there's a tremendous discrepancy as you go from one place to another on the earth. So what happens is that you have the Middle East, right? The Middle East is Israel, and Syria and all that area, Iraq. So pretty much all that area, it has a certain location, right? Longitude, latitude. It's north of the equator. It's not on the equator, this area. But it seems like what they want to say, the poskim, many poskim like Aruch HaShulchan, what he wants to say is that the horizon over there in the Middle East, is more southern, so therefore it gets darker faster. This is the nature of the way the planets spin around the solar system. So because of that, right, as the more southernmost you go, more south, it's going to get darker faster. What does that mean? Once the sun goes down, it's going to get darker at a faster rate. Then it's going to get as you go north. The more north you go, New York City, then you have places in France and Poland, which are even more northern. So what happens over there is that as the more north you go, the slower that it gets dark. Because what happens is that the angle that it's facing the sun, the earth, at that point of where you live, wherever, that place, it's going to take longer because it's more northern horizon. So what they're saying, right, several poskim, is that what the Talmud said about 13 and a half minutes and 72 minutes, they say that's talking about what? That's talking about Eretz Israel, the Middle East. It's talking about during the times of the equinox, right? Whether it's the spring or the fall, right? Where the day and the night are equal, more or less. So at that time, it's going to come out to be like that. 72 minutes, according to Rabbenu Tam, and 13 and a half minutes at the Geonim. But when it comes to other places, the more north you go, the more time that it takes to get dark. So what's going to be is that, therefore, you're going to have like longer time until it gets night. So it says Moshe Feinstein, because of that, even though Rabbenu Tam says 72 minutes, but he says that the proper thing to do in the summer, since the days are longer and the horizon is different at that time, so therefore he says the proper thing to do if you want to keep Rabbenu Tam is to keep 90 minutes. Why is that? Because the days are longer, Shaut Zmaniot, right? The halachic hours are longer, and this because of that it gets darker also later with regards to after the sunset. So therefore, says Moshe Feinstein, try to do 90 minutes in places like that. And that's what we do, by the way, in practice. A person who wants to keep Rabbenu Tam, which is 72 minutes after Shabbat, and not do any labor, wait 72 minutes, in the summer he has to do Shaut Zmaniot, halachic hours, which are longer, so therefore it comes out to be about 90 minutes in the summer, right? As opposed to what? As opposed to the winter, where the days are shorter, so there it's going to come out to be much shorter. What does that mean? Shorter than 72 minutes, maybe 60 minutes. Right? 1 hour should be enough. But you know what the most strange and unusual thing is that if you look at the charts, right, that delineate all these times, for the Jewish people, you have this calendar, this chart, calendar. You look at them, especially the ones that are printed over here in New York City and in the tri-state area, especially ones that are Ashkenazi, most of them are Ashkenazi. So what happens is that over there, what it tells you is that Shabbat is over like 40 minutes after the sun goes down. Now, according to what we just said, right, this is not according to the Geonim, this is not according to Rabbenu Tam. According to the Geonim, it should be 13 and a half minutes. According to Rabbenu Tam, it should be 72. Shaut Zmaniot, halachic hours. But nevertheless, right, how do they come up with the number of 40? Where does that come from, right? It's an arbitrary number which doesn't belong to either camp. And the funny thing is, that there is no other opinion here. There's only two. What does that mean? There's the Geonim, and then there's Rabbenu Tam. There's nothing in the middle. So comes these calendars, and gives us some time in the middle, which doesn't seem to fit into any camp over here, any category, any opinion. So the question is, how does that work? Are they correct? The problem is, that many of the Sephardi communities over here in this area don't understand all this stuff. They've never learned the details of this issue. And what they do is they keep according to what it says in the Ashkenazi calendars. And this is a mistake. Why is that? According to their approach to this sugya, to this topic matter, it works differently altogether. What does that mean? The way they approach it is like this, the Ashkenazim. What they say is that when we talk about the issue of Rabbenu Tam and the Geonim, first of all, right, they seem to pretty much nowadays agree that we don't pass like Rabbenu Tam. We don't hold like that. We do like the Geonim. But the Geonim is 13 and a half minutes. So how do they come up with 40 minutes? What's that? So what they're trying to say is like this, right? That since we live in a more northern hemisphere, northern area, right? horizon is different over here. So therefore what happens is that because of the longer twilight period, which occurs, the more north you go. So therefore, we don't see the stars in the sky until 40 minutes after the sun goes down. Even though in theory, we hold like the Geonim, they say 13 and a half minutes, but in practice, we don't see the stars until 40, or whatever is right, 25, because they're also adding some time for Shabbat as well. It's also a different factor. It's not only just the fact that to see the stars. They're doing Tosefet Shabbat as well, which is a recommendation. Right, whatever. I mean, you can add how much you want. You're supposed to add, but you don't have to add 15 minutes like they do. You can also 5 minutes or 2 minutes even. So the point is, right, that there is no obligation to add a certain amount of time for Tosefet Shabbat, to add time to Shabbat, which is a mitzvah in itself. I'm not going to get into that now. That's not the issue here. But the point is, right, that when it comes to this issue, what they're actually doing is, according to what they see in the sky. This is how they measure it. So we come up with some arbitrary time, which is 40 minutes, which doesn't match with either opinion here. Not Rabbenu Tam and not the Geonim. Right? But they're saying that you have to bend that opinion. You got to bend it. You got to bend it in order to bring it into the reality of where we are. What does that mean, where we are? We're in New York City, which is much more north than Eretz Israel, Jerusalem. Right? And therefore we have to go according to a different timetable altogether. That's what they're trying to say. But the truth is, that even though there is a shita like this, there is an opinion like this, brought down the Aruch HaShulchan, brought down in the Ilot Moshe, or Moshe Feinstein brings it down. So Moshe Feinstein, who was the posek of America, right, more or less, he says that you should keep 40 minutes. The minimum time to keep after Shabbat is 40 minutes. But as we said, it doesn't really match up with any of these opinions that we just mentioned. So therefore the question is, what do we do practically speaking, right? How do we do it? So according to those charts, what they do is they just shut up and listen, right? Whatever Moshe Feinstein says, they write it in the chart, right? And that's it, right? Finished, come on, nothing else to talk about. But the truth is, right, Moreno Rabbenu, Rabbi, he didn't agree with this method that they're using, the Ashkenazim. He had a different methodology, right? And probably more correct. He was more convincing, at least. Right? The way he spoke about this was much more convincing and much more compelling. So what he said was like this, right? He had a different approach to this. He said, look, we have two different opinions over here, right? We have Rabbenu Tam, we have the Geonim, we have two different Gemarot that they go like these two camps. So what happens is that we can't rely on seeing something with our naked eye to see if the stars came out or not. What's the reason why? Because we're not expert in that, right? We don't have this expertise. You have to have a very sharp eye for that to see, when the stars come out. So it says Tosfot and says Penei Yoshua that we don't know how to see the stars coming out. So we can't really be so precise when it comes to that, especially when you live in a smog-ridden area like New York City, right, where the skies are not clear. You know what happens, right? When you go to the Catskills upstate, you can see the stars much better over there. You see them much more vividly. Why is that? No smog, right? No pollution. That's the reason why. So what does that mean? That we have a power with the smog. We have the problem with the smog. We also have a problem that we don't know how to see it properly, the stars. We don't have this expertise, according to what we just mentioned. Number 3, also there's a different problem, which is that we have so much light on the grid, on the ground at night. That hampers your ability to see stars, because there's no contrast. You have light here, there's light up there. It's like, so there's no contrast. So when you're not in a dark place, yourself, and there's a lot of light around you, it's hard to see something in the sky, which is, lit up. It becomes harder. So there's 3 reasons why the rabbi, is telling you, right? Especially the reason that we mentioned that we don't have this expertise to see the stars. So therefore, right, he's telling you that, so how did you come up with this 40-minute business, right? You tell me, we have to wait till we see the stars with our naked eye, but we don't know how to see it like that. So therefore, the rabbi says, so then how do we solve the problem? With the Ashkenazim, there's a different issue, right? The way they're going, according to sighting of the eye, The reason why they're doing that is because what they're saying is that since we're more north in the world, the horizon is different, so therefore it gets darker later, so we can't really use the time that was given by the Chachamim for Eretz Israel, which is a different horizon altogether. So therefore what they're saying is that the only choice that we have left is to see it with our naked eye. So what are you going to tell me? We can't see with the naked eye? Yeah, okay, but we have there's nothing else we can do. In other words, that's the only choice we have. So we have to wait until we see it, even though maybe a little bit later than the actual sighting that a person can see if he was expert. But we do the best we can, and we live with it. That's what the Ashkenazim are saying. The Rabbi doesn't agree with this, So what he's saying is like this, right, the Rabbi? He's telling you that we don't know how to see it, so therefore the only way to do it is basically to call it like a safek, to call it a doubt. So what does that mean? We have a doubt. We have two different Gemarot. We have the Geonim, we have Rabbenu Tam. One goes like this Gemara, one goes like this Gemara, right? So what we do is, when there's a doubt, right? If it's something which is from the Torah, safek deoraita le'achamir. What does that mean? When you have a doubt about something from the Torah, you have to go stringent. So what does that mean, stringent? We're going to do like Rabbenu Tam, 72 minutes. And then when it comes to something which is rabbinical, right? We can be lenient because that's the rule, right? Safek d'Rabbanan Akil. When something is doubtful about rabbis, we can be lenient. So therefore, we can go lenient and like the Geonim. Right? So practically speaking, the rabbi's approach is much, much different than what we just said, namely the Ramosh Feinstein, right? And what the Ashkenazim do, practically speaking. So a person shouldn't get mixed up with these two things, If you go like this, you go like this. You go like that, you go like that. You can't mix these two different opinions. They're not really the same. They don't have the same results. So the way it works is like this, right? According to what the rabbi says, we also asked him about this, by the way. Before he passed away, we had a chance to ask him, and his answer was that when something is rabbinical, so do it like the Geonim, 13 and a half minutes. That's enough. When something is from the Torah, you can do like Rabbenu Tam, which is 72 minutes. So what that means, like practically speaking, is that, let's say we're talking about Shabbat, right? So let's say you want to drive your car after Shabbat goes out. So wait 72 minutes, and then you can drive, because the Shabbat, driving is from the Torah, you're lighting a fire in the engine, unless you have a Tesla, right? Or something like that, whatever, EV, whatever, those EVs, right? Who knows what's going to be in 10 years, right? 15 years. There may not be, combustion engines left over anymore. God knows, according to what they're saying. I don't know if it's true, but something gives me the feeling that it's not so true. I think they're just like, overstating it a little bit. Exaggerating, I don't think the combustion engine is going to be obsolete in 15 years. Whatever. Anyway, right? I wouldn't go that far. I don't know. It seems to me like it's exaggerated. They say, "Oh, this is the last car, that's going to be made like that." Who told you it's the last car? Give me a break. Don't come to panic mode. Okay, whatever. It is what it is. But anyway, right? The point is that when you have a combustion engine which has a fire inside, so you're breaking Shabbat, right? You're lighting a fire. So. Because of that, you got to wait, say, Rabbenu Tam, 72 minutes. But if you want to use your cell phone, right, or you want to use some kind of gadget like that, right, your computer or, some gadget, some tablet or God knows what, right? So for that, it's not from the Torah, right? There's a fire in the phone? There's no fire in the phone, right? Unless your battery catches fire. That's something else. We're not talking about that, right? That could happen sometimes. But usually that's not like that, right? There's no fire there. So it's not from the Torah, the prohibition of using a phone. For sure not, right? Not from the Torah. It's from the rabbis, at the worst case scenario. It's from the rabbis. Right? But anyway, the point is that since it's only rabbinical, you can be lenient. Like the Geonim, what does that mean? 13 and a half minutes after the sun goes down, you can already start using your phone after Shabbat. But the truth is, that in his books, Maran Rabbi, he writes not 13 and a half minutes, like the Geonim, the base opinion of the Geonim, the basic opinion. He writes 20 minutes. He rounds it off to 20. The reason why he does that, to round it off to 20, is because there's also different factors that can affect that. What does that mean? For instance, there's machloket between the Rambam and the other poskim regarding how long it takes to walk a mil. According to most poskim, it's 18 minutes. According to Rambam, it's 22 minutes. So because of that, there's all kinds of things, that you have to account for. And there's also Shaul Zmaniyot, as we said, right? The days in the summer are longer, so therefore the hours are also long according to Halacha. So therefore, in order to account for all this discrepancy, he rounds it off to 20 minutes. 20 minutes to round off. Even though it's not always like that, practically speaking, but it's a nice round number, the person can relate to, can remember, right? You can deal with that. So that's the reason why he says 20 minutes. So according to this, what the rabbi is saying, right? Anytime where you have a rabbinical prohibition about the issue of when night comes, you can be lenient and do 20 minutes. So, right, that has a lot of practical application. As we said, right, after Shabbat, depends on if you're using your phone or you're using your car, right? One is from the Torah, one is not from the Torah. But there's also other things involved. For instance, right, let's say you have a fast day. You're doing a fast. So most of the fast days are derabanan, they're from the rabbis. The only fast day which is from the Torah is Yom Kippur. All the other days are rabbinical. So therefore, the rabbinical days, you can do like the Geonim, 13 and a half minutes, 20 minutes, as we said, we round it off in order to account for all the different right, variables that we have there. 20 minutes, so 20 minutes, once the 20 minutes passes, after the sun goes down, according to Shita Maran, Rabbenu, you can already start to eat already after the fast day is over. You don't have to wait 40 minutes or 30 minutes, like it says in the Ashkenazi Luchot. It's not the same thing. We don't have the same system like they do. You want to be machmir, you want to be stringent like them? Fine, but the halacha is really not like that. The halacha is that we can be lenient like the Geonim when it comes to something which is rabbinical. So any rabbinical fast, 13 and a half minutes, 20 minutes after the sun goes down, you can eat already, you can drink. Except Yom Kippur, right, which is from the Torah. That's something else. So you got to wait 72 minutes for Yom Kippur. Same thing goes, for Shabbat, as we said, right, also. Shabbat is 72 minutes in many cases. We just had like the issue of the holidays now, right? So we had Yom Tov, Kaidre. So the truth is, that Yom Tov, the basic, prohibition of Yom Tov and the basic obligation of Yom Tov is from the Torah. Right? The Torah talks about Yom Tov, all the holidays. But nevertheless, regarding the issue of lighting a fire, on Yom Tov, it's only rabbinically forbidden to light a new fire. Right? The rabbis forbade to light a new fire, and they said you can only light a fire from existing fire. That's a rabbinical thing, but from the Torah, there's no such thing like that. From the Torah, you're allowed to light a fire, even a new fire, on Yom Tov. So that's why, right now, since we have that Yom Tov is over, and now, right, the question is, when am I going to drive my car, or when am I going to light my candle, right, to do something with that, I don't know, Havdalah, whatever it is I have to do, whatever it may be. Anyway, the point is that I don't have to wait after Yom Tov to light a fire more than 20 minutes. Why is that? Because I don't have to wait till Rabbenu Tam. Why? Because the issue of lighting a fire Yom Tov is only derabanan, it's only rabbinical. So therefore, right, I don't need to wait like Rabbenu Tam, and also I don't even have to wait until, according to what Moshe Feinstein said, 40 minutes. I don't need that, right? As we said, right, 40 minutes is really an artificial number, which doesn't exist in the poskim. Doesn't say anything about that in the poskim. In the Rishonim, in the Talmud, nobody says 40 minutes. So really the truth is, the first 40 minutes is like something new that came to the world that never existed before. These people made it up, in the sense. There is some logic behind it, but it's something which is made up. It's something which doesn't have any source. So, right. So when something is rabbinical, you can be lenient like the Geonim, 20 minutes. When something is from the Torah, wait till Rabbenu Tam, 72 minutes. I'll tell you something really funny, right? A couple of stories. This will drive home the thing, this lesson. So what happens is like this, right? That one time we were in Hanukkah time, we were at the Bet Knesset of Maran, Rabbi. So we were over there in the shul, and it was Motzi Shabbat. Shabbat was going out. So the custom is that they light also Hanukkah candles in the shul as well, in the Bet Knesset, in the synagogue. So what happened was that we were supposed to light over there when Shabbat went out, after we prayed over there at Maran. So what happened was that the rabbi told us, no, don't light. It's not Rabbenu Tam yet. You're not allowed to light yet. Don't light, right? It's not Rabbenu Tam. 72 minutes you got to wait after Shabbat goes out. So they told him, okay, so let's rely on the Geonim, and we'll light according to this opinion, But the rabbi told him, no, you cannot do that, I'm not going to let you. So he didn't allow them to light Hanukkah candles in the shul. Why is that? Because Shabbat, according to Rabbenu Tam, he didn't go out yet. So he didn't allow them to light the Hanukkah candles. So therefore what he did was, in the end, even though they argued with him, some people over there, he just closed down the shul, he kicked everybody out. He said, go home and light at home. Told them, right? Because you're not lighting over here before Rabbenu Tam. So what does that mean? In no way would he allow for somebody in his shul to light Hanukkah candles before the time of Rabbenu Tam. He would not allow that under any circumstances. So you see from there, by the way, how seriously he took the issue of observing the opinion of Rabbenu Tam when it comes to something which is something from the Torah. When something is from the Torah, he was very, very, very serious about it, and he kept it right with all his might and all his right. There's also another thing, which is that another question is like this. Okay, we have two different opinions, but the halacha, what is it really like? So the truth is that there's many people who fell on this side, many people who fell on the other side, but the truth is that there are, in Yakut Yosef, he brings down over there 30 Rishonim that hold like Rabbenu Tam. So the truth is, Rabbenu Tam is not a dat yachid. It's not a minority opinion. It's not just one rabbi, who got some crazy idea in his head. No, this is what we're talking about here. This is the majority opinion in the Rishonim. The majority of the Rishonim hold that like Rabbenu Tam. Not only that, besides that, right? Also Shulchan Aruch also as well. Shulchan Aruch and laws of Shabbat, paskins like Rabbenu Tam, and also the Ramah as well goes like him as well. So what do we see from there? The majority of Rishonim, at least 30. By the way, there's another book which says there's 80 Rishonim that hold like Rabbenu Tam. He brings 80 Rishonim. So whether you hold that it's 30 or it's 80, whatever you have in your quiver, the amount of rabbis that hold like Rabbenu Tam, the truth is that Rabbenu Tam has many, 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 many big rabbis that support him. So therefore, it seems like the majority opinion in the Rishonim, the earlier authorities, is like Rabbenu Tam. Yeah, and also Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah as well.
I always forget every year, but I think that the Ashkenazim also put tefillin during Sukkot.
Oh, yes, some of them do, some of them do, Right, yes. That's a different issue, but also, right, they have some things which they do differently, we have to discuss that one time, we'll talk about that. But anyway, I think we did mention it before, right? We touched on it, right? Yeah. But the point is, that. So what do we do practically speaking, right? Most of the Rishonim, the earlier authorities, and Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, which is the people that we go like in Halacha, Ashkenazim and Sephardim, both of us, they hold like Rabbenu Tam. So therefore, the rabbi said, even though the custom now is like the Geonim in most places, in some way or other, some method or other, right? There's different methods of calculating the Geonim. Mm-hmm. But the point is, right, some way or other, most people are doing the Geonim. By the way, there are still some Hasidic communities that do like Rabbenu Tam. If you go to Brooklyn, for instance, right? Over there, what you find is that they pray Mincha, the afternoon prayers, and it's already dark. How do they do that? Because they do like Rabbenu Tam. What does that mean? That 72 minutes is still considered to be daytime until 72 minutes, right? So therefore, they do the Mincha prayer very late over there in those places.
They're Ashkenazi.
Yeah, Ashkenazim, right. But specifically Hasidic people, right?
Sure.
But the other Ashkenazim, the Lithuanian, they don't do like that anymore. They stopped that a long time ago already. So, how does that work out? The best thing to do is like this, practically speaking. A person should know. First of all, right, this shita, this opinion, which is brought down in the Luchot, which is brought down in these charts and these calendars, 40 minutes is an artificial number which has no basis in halacha. It was created by nice thinking, some nice, ingenuity, but practically speaking, there's no yesod, there's no foundation for it.
Are Hasidim laws more stringent than anybody else's laws?
That's a whole different lecture in itself. If you want to talk about that. We have to do a lecture on that.
No, just
Right?
say yes or no. You can do the lecture if you
Oh,
want.
well, it's not. If the answer was so simple, I would tell you.
I mean, it's not
But the
like
answer is not so simple.
It's not like they have their own Torah, you know.
Well, that's the whole thing. We have discussed that, right? What it is with them. Yeah, we have, I'm gonna visit Hashem one day. We'll get into that. If you remind me.
They're out there.
If you remind me, we'll get into it.
Sure. It's just interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. So anyway, the point is like this, right? That as we said, this number of 40 minutes or whatever, 45 or 35, all these calendars that have these things, there's no basis in Halacha whether you're going like the Geonim or the Rabbenu Tam.
Yeah.
So especially, right, okay, the Ashkenazim, this is their custom, this is what they would do, because the rabbis instruct them to do so. You know, so that's what they do, you know, and that's normal, that's very nice. You know, but by us, that we're not instructed to this way. Our rabbis never told us to do 40 minutes. So therefore, right, the people who are doing this, the Sephardi people, they're from the Sephardi communities, whether it's, Bukharians or Persians or Georgians, they're making a mistake over here. Why is that? Because according to Maran,
I don't think they're doing that.
that's what they're doing, 40 minutes, right? That's what they're doing. According to Maran, Shalom, he doesn't hold by this 40 minutes. He holds that it's either, right, 20 minutes according to Geonim, if it's rabbinical, if it's from the Torah, 72 minutes like Rabbenu Tam. That's what you got to do. There's nothing in the middle. There's no middle shita.
It doesn't hurt though. I mean,
what does that mean? Doesn't hurt?
It's not like they're breaking halacha or sinning.
Well, if you think about it for a second, right? What did we just say? Let's just recap, right? Recap this. According to them, you can do anything you want in 40 minutes, right? Whatever you want to do. According to us, you cannot. Why? Because it's something from the Torah. You got to wait 72 minutes. So there is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know what I mean?
No, I miscalculated. I did it.
It's okay. I'm just, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
there are some discrepancies there, right?
Yeah,
practically speaking,
then
as
you're
well.
breaking a rule. Yeah, you're breaking a rule.
So either way, right? Either you're being too lenient or
the 20 minutes.
Too stringent, right?
Yeah,
So the thing is like this, right? That because of this, what should a person practically do? He has to figure out, right? Is this prohibition that I'm doing now? Is it from the Torah or is it from the rabbis? If it's from the rabbis, you can do in 20 minutes after the sun goes down. Right? Whatever it may be. Whether it's after Shabbat or after whatever it may be, right? Yom Tov or whatever it is. But something which is from the Torah, like driving a combustion car, right? The old style. The old school, right? Right? So those cars there's a fire in there, and you got to wait 72 minutes, right? That's the idea. But if you have a Tesla, you can wait 20 minutes, as we said, right? That's the idea. Maybe it's worth it to get one. I don't know. That's up to you. I'll let you decide. Probably the problem is the paint job is not so good.
Yeah.
The paint is coming off. So,
that's what they said. It has many issues.
Quality control.
Yeah.
So anyway, right? That's a different discussion.
Yeah.
We won't get into that today. Right? We'll have a discussion. That's not synagogue talk. So anyway, right? The point is that if it's something from the Torah, 72 minutes. The Rabbenu Tam. If it's something from the rabbis, 20 minutes is enough. Now, another thing which is interesting to know is that, I'll tell you a funny story. We'll end with this. One time when I was in Israel, I was just starting out over there, in my beginning beginning years. So I didn't know all these things that I know today, a lot of things I didn't know at that time. I was a freshman, at best a sophomore, right? Whatever. So what happened was that I remember, I went to a certain shul, and it was Yom Kippur, So Yom Kippur finished, and then, I waited 30, 40 minutes, just like the Ashkenazim do. Then I started to already, to do what I need to do, right? To eat, drink, whatever it is, right? So one guy comes up to me, in Israel over there. He tells me, he says, what are you doing? He says, well, don't you know Yom Kippur, you have to wait till Rabbenu Tam? 72 minutes? He tells me, why are you doing 40 minutes? He caught me, So I told him, I said, at that time I wasn't so knowledgeable in these things. So I told him, I said, what do you want? I told him, I said, this is our custom, we do 40 minutes. Leave me alone, give me a break, get me off the hook, just don't give me a hard time, So it kind of like ended like on a bad note, kind of like sour note. So what happened was I went home after Yom Kippur, and I was living in like an old building, so the elevator was like very rickety, rickety. So I go into the elevator, and I press the button to go up to my floor. Boom! All of a sudden I'm stuck, like I'm stuck in the elevator, like this old rickety elevator, God, and that was very unpleasant to be there. Like after a couple of minutes, it started to move again. But I said to myself, maybe God is giving me a message over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That I should keep Rabbenu Tam, just like that guy told me.
Yeah.
Maybe I was being too arrogant. But the truth is that from then on, for some reason, I took it on. I took it on to keep Rabbenu Tam. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? I took it on to keep it, regarding things which are from the Torah. The truth is, the rabbi himself. I'll finish with this. The rabbi, they asked his son-in-law. His name is Rabbi Abutbul, right? Aharon Abutbul. So he asked him. He said, Rabbi, when you said to keep Rabbenu Tam after Shabbat goes out, did you mean something which is from the Torah, a labor which is from the Torah, or something which is even rabbinical? So the rabbi answered him, directly. He says, I meant only something which is from the Torah. Something which is rabbinical, you can be needing like the Geonim 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So he told him, he says, I myself also am not lenient. I'm not stringent. Regarding with things which are from the rabbis. I myself am also lenient.
Yeah.
That's what he told him, right? So if the rabbi was lenient, all the more so we can be lenient, right?
Yeah.
A person has to understand, right? Don't be holier than the chief rabbi.
Right. All right.
Right. So this is the way it is. So hopefully, right, the hope of this lecture, right, the goal is to get people start to become aware of this subject, and stop making these mistakes, which are somewhat right, illogical things, that they're doing.
Yeah.
There's this one rabbi in Eretz Israel who made like a calendar of times, this time, that time. So one of the main times is when it gets dark, when it gets night. So what he said was, he was going up. There was a certain yeshiva that he was teaching in there. It's called Etz Chaim. His name was Rabbi Tokachinsky. Right, this rabbi Tokachinsky. So this Tokachinsky, he used to go up on the roof every day, of the yeshiva, and look at the stars, and he would see like when the stars come out after sundown. So he would write that down, and he made a whole luach, he made a whole chart like that. He made a whole calendar like that. So that's what he did, So when the rabbi heard about this, he said, says, well, he's going up on the roof of his yeshiva. He says, I don't care if he goes up to heaven, and goes up there. He says, I don't care what he does. There's only two opinions. There's Rabbenu Tam and there's Geonim. Don't come now bring a third opinion from your own, some concoction you concocted in your mind. No such a thing like that. You know what I mean? You have to learn straight. You have to go straight with Halacha. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen, amen.
Amen.
Hashem should bless you with wealth, health, happiness, all the good things, and the nice Jewish girls. No foreign ones.
The three chicks that...
no strangers.
The three chicks that you converted. One of them got